The Monster Mile. Since 1969, drivers have been zipping their way around this 1-mile track. But ever since this facility switched to concrete surfaces in 1995, Miles the Monster has been hungry. The 46-foot-tall monster devours not just the tires and sheet metal of its challengers, it also chows down on their confidence and dreams. Tonight, the top drivers in the PRL are all set for their turn to face the beast. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the virtual Dover International Speedway in the heart of Dover, Delaware, for the Global SimRacing Channel's coverage of round number 6 of the Precision Racing League Cup Series season, sponsored by Diecast Kings. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside me in the booth tonight is NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series driver Christian Challenger, who will also be joined along with many other drivers in a little bit. Behind the scenes is our director Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. What does it take to get around Dover International Speedway? Let's take a look at our track guide to find out.
The Monster Mile, and the less popular, but still sufficient, White Lightning. Dover International Speedway is a place that has lived up to both of those nicknames over the years. It is a tough track that requires accuracy and bravery to turn an ultra-fast lap. The walls on the exits of both 2 and 4 are punishing, and the 1-2 combination of slapping the outside wall and then slamming the inside wall, either front stretch or back stretch, has caused chaos in races going back to the track's inception. Dover opened in 1969 as an asphalt 1-mile oval, and fittingly, with it being a race in the late 60s and early 70s, Richard Petty won that inaugural Cup race here. Dover hosted nearly all Cup races during those early years, before NASCAR started to bring over the Grand National Series as a companion event. By 1993, though, those Mid-Atlantic seasons had taken its toll on the surface, and the decision was made to resurface the track. In a risky proposition, they chose to make it concrete, following the decision that Bristol had made 2 years prior. In 1994, the first races were held on that new surface, and the Dover we either love or hate came into being. In more modern times, the track has held a wider variety of races. IndyCar ran here in the late 90s, with more recently Whelen Modifieds, trucks, and ARCA all having made stops at Dover. And finally, yes, the 1-kilometer quarter-horse track inside the Speedway is still used to this day, with the casino on the backstretch. Now it's time to strap in and hope the monster doesn't bite.
That was a look at your GSRC lap guide for the best way around Dover International Speedway. As these drivers practice some of the restarts and race pace for tonight, let's bring in my partner for tonight, Christian Challenger. And Christian, you competed at this track on Tuesday. It is a very difficult circuit to deal with. Times ranging to 22 flats to 22.2s in the short run, Christian.
Yeah, very unique racetrack, a 1-mile, very, very fast concrete racetrack. So there is a lot of tire wear, as you said, a lot of fall off up to 2 seconds. So we've got to watch out for that tonight. It puts a real premium on saving tires, and a lot of banking as well. 24 degrees in the turns and 9 degrees on the straights does make restarts a little bit tricky as well with that pull off of turn 4.
We'll have a lot to discuss when it comes to how this race will develop and how the track will factor in that for this evening. Now, before we get to our driver standings, let's talk about our season sponsors. First with Diecast Kings. Diecast Kings, your home for the best selection of NHRA and NASCAR diecast cars at diecastkings.com. Once again, diecastkings.com. You can also find them on Facebook at Diecast King. Also, this season, a new sponsor has come aboard throughout the campaign, ButtKicker. ButtKicker products have incredible immersion and realism that add to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat and feel what you've been missing by going to thebuttkicker.com. Now the championship standings getting ready for the second half of the campaign starting tonight. Richard Regan Jr. is on top of the pylon with 172 points on the season. Bradley Holly's in second. Remember, missed the first round of the season, already has his drop factored in. Joshua Daniels, Adam Zemke, Charles Sumner round out the top 5 in the driver's standings. That's after a thrilling finish at Talladega last week, where Daniels beat Dan McLaren by 0.041 seconds in a green-white checkered finish. That set up Wetterback Racing to the top of the team standings. Entering the second half of the season, Skidmark Motorsports, Rescue Racing, 24/7 Racing, and Pilot Performance Group round out the top 5 out of 9 organizations taking part in this season's PRL Cup Series, sponsored by Diecast Kings. Now, Christian, let's go over the race details, because a couple things to keep in mind, especially for the first half of the second half of the season, rather.
Yeah, round 6 of 10 tonight, and 110 laps, or 60 minutes as usual. We have seen a couple of races time out. I suspect that we'll see actually a lot of green flag running tonight. Fixed setup. It is a little bit difficult to keep the tires on the car in the fixed set, especially with the right front, so I think we've got to keep an eye on guys with that. No fast repairs, and a 24 incident limit.
Lots to keep an eye on in that mark, absolutely, this evening. Drivers starting to make their way towards qualifying, though, for tonight's action for PRL Cup Series racing. Now, few storylines to talk about. First things first when it comes to tonight's action, Christian. We were talking about this pre-race, hit upon it during the track map. This is a track that eats up tires and quickly. Tire wear going to be a massive factor tonight. It's been a factor from the drop of the green flag to the first official race.
Yeah, it is very difficult to keep the tires on the car here, and I think you're going to see a couple of drivers maybe start the run out very, very slowly. Maybe some drivers such as Jay Felton, they're very, very good on long runs, and I know the drivers we've seen, Richie Regan Jr. is perhaps not one of the better drivers when it comes to keeping the right front on his car in a long run. So I think we might see a couple of different drivers than we've seen come to the front here, just through tire management, really. And I think it allows a lot of different strategies to play out, and really it's going to come down to when you choose to make a green flag pit stop. With 110 laps, the obvious point is about 55 laps in, but the rubber on the track makes a huge difference as well, and the longer we run, the more rubber goes down, the easier it becomes to keep the tires on the car.
And keep in mind as well, partly quality skies for today. See if we can bring up our track conditions, in fact. And these track conditions, should note, have been swinging all practice long. They started in the 120s, have swung to the 110s. They're back to 111 degrees. In fact, during this run for Robert Melican, it dropped by 1 degree as he was going through turns 3 and 4 on his first lap.
Yeah, we have seen that the track temperature with the V7 tire doesn't make as big a difference as it did with the V6 tire, but especially on these concrete tracks, it really works against you. Obviously, the colder the track is, the less you're sliding around, and when it's already a high wear track, it really isn't in your favor to have high track temperatures, so I think it only adds to the challenge.
And I think that's why so many drivers, too, though, Christian, when it comes to the temperatures, is drivers like Cervantes and Durbin, yes, are trying to get out as quickly as they can, but with the clouds above, the temperatures are going to swing massively, and track position is key here at Dover. It might be the difference between, in some of these drivers, if they wait at the right time, starting in 10th to starting on the pole.
Yeah, we have seen that with big differences in track temperature, both when there's clouds across the racetrack and if there is a caution period as well. Sometimes we see the track temp in both scenarios drop as much as 10 degrees, so it's pretty significant, and obviously if you do catch that, it's gonna help you out on your lap. And I mean, we look at the scoring pylon right now, and the gap between first and second is only 7 thousandths of a second, so a little bit of a cooler track is really going to make the difference.
Durbin hits the wall on his second lap. Josue Tellez, one of the quickest drivers in practice, now the quickest in qualifying with a 22.023. Only a 111 track temp still for him, but he's happy with his second lap. Second laps have been the quicker of some of these times so far in this session so far. 15 total put in times. 25 competitors, though, in the field this evening. And this could be an important race for some to try and start building their championship campaigns now, Christian.
Yeah, I think as you move into the second half of the season, it's now the time to stop having bad results, being in wrecks and so on, and just get into the end and scoring a lot of points. We see a couple of drivers. Mark Kalin's actually a bit further back than I thought. Right now, he's in 16th spot. Must have had a mistake on his lap. He's 6/10 off the pole.
Yeah, take a look at some of these drivers. Thomas Morris currently 11 on the pylon. Second lap does not count. If you tap any of the safer barriers anywhere around this racetrack, you will not have an official attempt on that specific lap. Colton Lane, meanwhile, up to 10th position with his second lap. So drivers are picking up the pace here while James Duke's trying to complete a lap backwards.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that safer barrier, actually. That's a new addition this past week, and it has thrown a couple of drivers for a loop. I know it was a little bit tricky for myself. As you see right there, a good example of that. Brandon Chatley, in the past, he would have had an extra foot of room to work with there, and you did use it. So now that space is gone and that safer barrier is the entire length of the track, it has changed the line just a little bit.
Change on the pylon, Bradley Hawley up to second position on his second lap of a 22.055. Paul Williams the second currently bumps him to P number 2. So fast and flying qualifying, all but a couple drivers have taken times. James Duke still trying to set his backwards though, it appears. Pretty sure that may or may not count for the 76 and will be a 47.1 and be the last car to be able to put in a time. Cervantes and Chad Brown will not put in official qualifying attempts for Dover International Speedway. That means it's time to look at how they'll line up for tonight's action under the clouds at Dover. After a high, fast-paced qualifying session, Josue Tellez will start on the pole with a 22.023. Paul Williams, the second, his teammate, will start alongside him on the front row. Bradley Hawley and Richard Regan Jr. dead heat in the championship fight. They'll start side by side in row number 2. Joshua Daniels and Jay Feld in row 3 with Zemke and Scotty Johnson. Row 4, Dan McLaren and Pat Harvey, one of the quickest cars in practice, rounds out the top 10, Christian.
In row 6, you got Robert Bissell Jr. alongside Tristan Callahan, and the next row back is Colton Lane and Thomas Morris. Coming up in 15th and 16th, you got Stephen Durbin and Brendan Chatley, and then Robert Malikan with 17th with Charles Sumner in 18th. And on the last row inside the top 20, we have Adam Schoen in 19th and Byron Hilton in 20th.
Mark Kalin, one of the quickest drivers in practice as well, did not get a good qualifying attempt. 21st position for him. JD Baker. Then you have the slowest time. James Duke, you've seen flashes of it. Qualified backwards around the entire racetrack. He'll start 23rd. Cervantes and Brown electing to start at the back do not put in qualifying attempts. So once again, to reset, 24 degrees of banking in the corners, about 9 degrees down the straightaways here today at Dover. Your keys to victory tonight, Christian.
All about tire management, all about not getting stuck on the outside lane. That we have seen that the drivers on the bottom lane, especially on restarts, they tend to get a much better pole. It's very difficult for the second place car on the outside to get away well with how the banking drops off on the corner exit. And lastly is pit strategy.
Yeah, pit strategy is going to be definitely key. We've seen it pop up in Saturday Night Thunder, seen it on Tuesday with the NASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series, seen it in fact today if you're watching on Fox FS1 of the Fox Sports app for the Pro Invitational. But the cars make their way into turn 1 and 2 behind the iRacing official pace car. Who are you keeping your eye on the most tonight, Christian, as that cone says hello to the safer barrier?
Well, I think I'm definitely keeping an eye on Jay Felton. We've seen him be very, very strong on long runs, and I think that this kind of track and this kind of tire is going to play to his advantage. A couple other drivers I'm looking out for. I want to see how Richard Regan Jr. does on this tire, and Jose Tellez, obviously on the pole, but we've seen he's very good at short runs. I haven't really seen that much from him on long runs.
Very curious of that as well as the drivers make their way in 3 and 4. Such a beautiful racetrack. Lots of sponsorship banners across the racetrack as we're all set to go racing from Dover International Speedway. Buckle up, folks. We're all set to go. Pace car is off. Josue Tellez waiting for the green flag on the exit of turn 4. Paul Williams II starts on the outside. Marty the flagman waves the green flag. We're underway from Dover.
Tellez waiting all the way to the green there and has kept everybody really bunched up 2 by 2.
Good launch for Tellez, holding the bottom side, but Paul Williams II already drops to 4th, finds a hole to get to the bottom already in 3.
I think that was smart. There was obviously no way he was going to hold on to the outside on the restart, and there was a big gap there for him to fall into, so it looked like he just made the decision to ride back there, and I think that's a good move.
Most of the field already has single filed out across the entire pack, and we talked about this, Christian. If you are stuck on that middle line, you're likely going backwards.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get any kind of roll through the middle of the corner. You actually get pretty good exits, but you can't carry any mid-corner speed, as we see a little bit of side-by-side. Jay Felton's actually the driver stuck on the top side right now.
Felton actually got passed by McLaren in the backdrop. Delez with the quickest lap off the jump with a 22-1. Should note track temps have dropped by 5 degrees from the qualifying, but Regan Jr. has moved his way up to second just in front of these machines. Now, Christian, as someone who raced here on Tuesday, what's the best way, in your opinion, to try and set up a pass? Because some of the competitors who raced against talked about how difficult it was in the short run, but it's doable.
Yeah, it's extremely difficult to get passes to come off on the short run because everybody has so much grip, and nobody's really struggling with anything. Nobody's struggling with front tire grip and rotation in the corner. Nobody's struggling with rear tire grip and drive off. But as the run goes on, people do start to pick up issues either at one end of the car or the other. It's really about using that to your advantage. If you've got a lot of center roll, you can try and get underneath them on corner exit. If you've got a lot of drive off, you can try a big diamond type line and try and get a big run on them that way. And it's really, you got to get to their inside before the next turn.
Seen already the top 3 drivers separating out amongst a 1 second gap. Fastest car on the racetrack right now is the 46. Your points leader, Regan Jr. He is really trying to reel in Telez and quickly here in the short run.
Yeah, and it's difficult to kind of pace yourself because you have to pace yourself to the cars around you. And you can't really let Telez go way out front. But at the same time, you don't want to push any harder than you have to. So this is a fine balance here for Richard Regan Jr. He just wants to slowly pull up on him and then get a run rather than really run him down and then try and, well, it looks like he's going to get to his inside into 3 here anyway.
The Aberzi Raceware USA machine to the point. Regan Jr. leading his first lap at Dover tonight. And the Ballistic Union / Bobby Dale Earnhardt's Legacy Esports machine has been quick all season, but the problem has been on the long runs, Christian. He's said it multiple times, keeping care of that right front.
Yeah, and I think here he's already built nearly a 4/10 gap over Telez, and I'm not sure he needs to do that. He's on the point now. He can really just wind it off and roll there and let everybody behind fight it out. There's no real need for him to build a gap. He's where he needs to be.
Right now, the gap is already up to nearly 4/10 of a second, by the way. As you see on the left side pylon, Hawley's currently in 3rd position. But the pack continues to try to shuffle along. It's back to about P8. Jay Felton is leading the 2nd grouping, and slowly but surely, Scotty Johnson, Robert Bisot Jr., Pat Harvey, and the rest of that conga line are all trying to close back in on the 5.
Yeah, and it's another difficulty when you're in a line of cars like this. As we've seen at other racetracks, if you pull out to make a pass and it doesn't come off, you tend to get stuck in that lane that you've gone to, and then you lose all the spots for everybody else that was in that train of cars behind you. So you got to be really tactical in setting up your passes.
Yeah, one of the most improved drivers this season, you have to say, though, is the leader in P9, I should rather say, that 2nd grouping at the moment, in Scotty Johnson. Last season had ups and downs around the back end of the top 20. This season, he's been a fixture inside the top 10 this season, along at every single track.
Yeah, he's been really, really strong, and he's a driver I've known actually on iRacing for quite some time now, all the way back to around about 2017, and it looks like he's made a lot of improvements, and especially in this season, as you say, we've seen him regularly inside the top 10. It looks like he's really picked up on how to manage his V7 tire.
Agree with you on that one. Fastest car on the track was Bisot Jr. last time, by that past time. That's the start and finish line with Colton Lane. Right now, the pace already 6/10 of a second of fall off. Change of 2nd position up the road. Hawley has taken away 2nd spot from Telez.
And this is something that I thought we'd see with Telez dropping back a little bit on the longer runs. And Hawley looked like he saved a little bit more tire at the beginning. It'll be interesting to see if he can now actually pull up to Richard Regan Jr. or if he's going to try and wait a little bit longer before he makes an attack.
Here's a look, and you can see he did tap the wall, Hawley, with that right front damage, but had a good run off of turn 2. Telez gave him the space. Bye-bye went 2nd position. Already the gap is half a second between those 2 cars. But we've talked about the success of Hawley multiple times throughout the broadcast this season. Race director as well as a multiple-time series and series champion. also put in some of the most practiced laps out of anybody, more than 130 laps in the past 2 hours before qualifying.
Yeah, that's a lot of laps at a track like this. It's pretty tough on you both mentally and depending on what wheel setup you got, it can be quite physical as well. So that's a lot of practice time, especially right before a race when you've got to do another 110 as well.
And that doesn't include, mind you, all the preparation from, say, official races for an event such as this tonight, or how many practice laps you turned in official practices or in your own hosted sessions, Christian.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty certain that he's going to have done more than just the laps he's done in this practice session tonight. So he's definitely been putting in the time this week.
Daniels, meanwhile, is trying to get a move on. Still where he started this race tonight, but is slowly but surely picking up pace. Was quicker than the 2 cars in front of him, the teammates in Williams II and Tellez.
Yeah, you see Tellez is now kind of starting to build a bit of a line behind him. He's got Paul Williams and Josh Daniels, and Adam Zemke is not too far behind as well. He's only about 3 to 4 car lengths back of this line of cars now. It's
gotten to the point as well where Jay Felton, Dan McLaren, and the rest of that second grouping, they've closed their way in for the most part, and a couple drivers have dropped off the back end of the line. But Tellez lets his teammate go, but here comes the freight train. Daniels makes the pass as well.
Yeah, as you say, obviously there he was letting his teammate go, but that did illustrate how kind of bad that high line is, especially through 1 and 2. You saw that he had no exit speed relative to the 77 and just powerless to stop him passing him as well.
Looks like Williams II will also let by Daniels. Daniels, one of the quickest cars on the track. Behind him, Tellez, though, still stuck on the top side. Zemke and now Felton making moves on the 24 machine, as well as a couple others.
Dan McLaren able to duck under Tellez before he could get down to the bottom on the exit of 4, and that's just how quickly you can lose spots being stuck on that top side. Obviously he went up there to let cars by. I don't think he envisaged letting almost the entire top 10 past him though.
What do you do as a driver to try and keep yourself composed when you lose that many positions in the span of about 10 laps, because he was one of the quickest cars early, now one of the slower cars after 10 laps difference?
I think in those kind of scenarios, all you've got to pick up on is that you've essentially, I don't want to say that you ran the run wrong, but you can clearly see that the short run pace that you tried to extract from the car hasn't helped him. So now he's kind of just got to hold on, hope for a yellow, or get to that first pit stop, and then work from there to do something different on the next run.
Looking on board Jay Felton, and one of the main things with this track is you're never completely level with the surface of the ground, and you're bouncing and banging around. You can see how much the bumps are hitting for Jay Felton here as he goes to the bottom of Zemke.
Yeah, it's like driving off a cliff, especially into turn 3. The track just completely falls away on entry, and it's really difficult to keep the car pinned to that white line on the entry, because if you get it just slightly too wrong, you can underdrive or overdrive, and if you overdrive it, you go way up the racetrack. If you underdrive it, you clip the apron and then go up the racetrack. So it's a really difficult track, and you have to be very, very precise around here.
We were talking about this, for example, with Tellez, but we also talked about what would happen with Regan Jr. since he pushed a lot during the short run. Currently in front of all these cars, as you see some of the moves for Felton and co. along the bottom. Holly's been reeling in the race leader and Regan Jr. about a 1/10 of a second each and every time by up the road from these machines. So the tire wear is absolutely kicking in here, Christian.
Yeah, Richie Regan Jr.'s last lap was a 5:05 and Holly's was a 4:40. So Holly does have a pace advantage. But I do think Regan Jr. has done a better job of keeping his tires on it than the pole sitter. Right now, Tellez's last lap was actually 24 flat, so nearly a full half second slower than Richard Regan Jr.
Durbin has pulled his car in down the pit lane. Severe right front damage. You see him on the bottom top of the screen just a moment ago. But both of these cars are really pushing it on corner exit and turn 2. Last time by, Holly nearly spanked the wall off the corner. This time, both of them about a quarter of a car length away from the safer barrier.
And you can see how hard they're pushing it by how much the car kind of pulls away from the wall on exit. Right there, you can see from the onboard shot, Richard Regan Jr., as he comes off the corner, if he kind of had just a regular line, he'd stay tight to the wall, but instead, the car kind of really pulls off it, so he's really cranking the wheel to keep it away from that.
And you see a different line as well from the onboard with Regan Jr., where he's almost trying to go for a double apex, trying to use the banking as a ramp to diamond it off the corner.
Yeah, it looks like he's driving it very, very deep, and as you say, he's very high up the racetrack in the middle of the turns. You see that, just clips the white line and then washes up maybe half a car, and then he's back down, as you say, to the double apex, try and get that straight drive off the corner.
As we've been showing that, an air 10th or two has been closed in by Holly. And Holly's gaining a ton of apex speed, mind you, as Regan Jr. each and every time goes up the banking to try and diamond it off.
Yeah, Holly with a very different line, a line actually much similar to my own, which is to really keep that left front corner, just pin down on that white line as much as you can and just roll through the corner. I find that helps you on exit. You run into less problems kind of trying to keep the car off the wall. You just naturally exit the corner just a bit lower.
Yeah, you've seen it as well with the miles per hour. Up to 7 miles per hour slower is Regan Jr. Every apex. Lap traffic a-ho, it's James Duke. Let's buy the leaders on the bottom side, but a checkup from Regan Jr. puts Holly into position to make a move. Duke hits the wall, but the gap is down to 0.2 of a second.
Probably one of the worst places to catch a lap car, right on corner exit. It always checks you up no matter what. And that's just completely evaporated the lead that Regan Jr. had.
Baron Hilton blown up on the bottom of the racetrack, but the race lead is the focus. Holly trying to make the move for the race lead. Can he poke his way to the inside? No. Regan Jr. still playing hard defense, having to let up hard on the apex off. Big bobble from the leader.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult here for Holly to get past because Regan Jr. is strong on the exit of the corner. It's in the middle where he's been lacking a little bit of apex speed, as you mentioned, and that's where Holly's going to have to really kind of try and roll underneath him. I think the 3 and 4 end of the racetrack's his best opportunity.
Can Holly get the run? Yes, a bit of a clip on the apron for the 46. Checkup, though, from the 184. Still can't poke his way to the inside. And this is the trickiness of trying to get a pass at Dover that was seen all week, unless you can force that. Holly, can he dive to the inside? Yes. Regan Jr. gives him the space.
Yeah, very, very tight there, but I think Richie Regan Jr. knows that it's only a matter of time at this point. Holly's definitely looked the stronger car for the past 10 laps.
Holly had to back out that time by, still shuffling around for the race lead. Coming to 75 to go this time by. If you're Holly, how do you play this now? We've seen him dive a couple times to the bottom side. Nothing's worked so far.
I still think his best opportunities on the 3 and 4 end of the racetrack to just really roll that white line. And I think it's going to take a little bit of a mistake from Regan Jr. just to slip up on the exit of 4, just to be a little higher than he needs to be. So he has to lift, and then that's going to give Holly the opportunity to just roll underneath him as they come onto the front stretch.
A little bit of a calmer run now for Holly. Not pushing as hard as before. Chad Brown is the next car these drivers will lap. Brown gives him the bottom side, not a factor in this battle. As this has gone on, P6, that's been stacking up as well, Christian, because McLaren, he's having to hold off Besot Jr., Harvey, and Tristan Callahan as well.
Yeah, we've had some serious comers and goers in this pack. Paul Williams, the second, actually has fallen well to the end of this line. He started in second, he's all the way back to 10th. He looks like he's really struggling to get his car turned. And that's really what stacked up a lot of these guys. Dan McLaren's in amongst this fight. We've seen him be very strong on long runs, but he just doesn't look like he can cut through this line.
And keep in mind, the driver at the back end of the line, Durbin, had to come down to the pit lane about lap 24, lap 25. Did take fresh tires, pit for 55 seconds to get damage repaired. He is the fastest car on the racetrack at the moment and just hasn't been able to have a chance to pass by these drivers fighting for position, as Harvey loses a spot to Callahan at the back of the line. Battle for the race lead side by side in turn 3 and 4, though. Regan Jr. on the top tries to squeeze Holly as he's forced off the gas.
And Holly not able to stay to Richard Regan Jr.'s quarter as they get down to 1. And I think that's the best opportunity he's probably going to have for this run. I expect we'll see them both pit around about that lap 50 point. And we've seen how long it's taken Holly to actually have an opportunity to pass. It's unlikely he's going to get another shot before the end of this run.
You talk about pit stops. Colton Lane just came down this time by in the 60 machine, had lost a lot of positions. Your thoughts on the strategy, because tire fall off is big here. Already 1.7 seconds in this race alone.
Yeah, and this is a real play for track position. The fuel window is very, very wide, about 80 laps on a full tank, so they've been able to get to the end all the way from about lap 20. Lap 30. So this really is pretty early, though. He's going to have to do 70 laps, and we did see that's been pretty tricky throughout the week. You do start to run into tire trouble around about 70 to 75 laps into a run.
Yeah, especially with tire blowouts, Christian.
Yeah, that's something we've seen a lot of. A lot of drivers losing right fronts. Some actually losing right rears, but I suspect on the fixed set, we're going to see a lot of drivers lose right fronts.
You blow a tire at all on Tuesday?
I did not, but I did get pretty close.
In other words, folks, be careful of those tires, or else you will end up blowing in and potentially going to the safer barrier. Right now, though, James Duke led by the leaders despite the fresher tires. As that fight has continued, though, Joshua Daniels and Jay Felden have been slowly reeling in the top two because of how hard these two had been fighting in the side-by-sides.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, that obviously having a battle really does check up the two cars in the fight. And we see Holly's falling back a little bit right now. I don't think he's actually slower on pace. I think he's just taking a breather, so to speak.
James Duke right now is trying to drive around the race leaders, though, right in the middle now of the top two. 76 did have to come down for damage repair. You see him now being let go by both the lead cars. They know he's got fresher tires by 40-plus laps. However, because they had to let him go, these two drivers at the front lost another 2/10 to third and fourth.
Yeah, and lap traffic is a real factor in this racetrack, obviously, with the different pit strategies, and some drivers pitting much earlier. The pace differential is massive, almost 2 seconds, so those guys on new tires, they have to make their own race work. They have to be ruthless in passing cars, because they'll lose their advantage of those fresh tires if they don't. But at the same time, the guys who are staying out there, it's in their interest to not make it easy for the guys who pit and who have the fresh tires to get by.
Pit stops are still underway for Melican and Chatley, by the way, while P number 6 continues to be a hornet's nest, because fresh tires, old tires, and checkups galore off turn 4.
Yeah, massive fight going on right here. The 81 was trying to get through. He's 4 laps down right now, so he is on fresh tires. We see Colton Lane's going to the wall.
Colton Lane just got shuffled up into the wall. Door-to-door contact with Callahan off of turn number 2. Callahan still going. Lane now catching back up as well to the back end of the drivers on the old tires.
You see Lane to the outside, and look like the bottom car just pushed up a little bit. Lane clipped it. You see Lane and the 11 there. Then you got Durbin ahead in the 81. The 11 will go to the bottom of the racetrack. You see the difference in tires here. Lane to the outside. And actually looked like there was a little bit of net code there. The 11 looked like he held the line quite well to the bottom of the racetrack.
In live action, though, Lane bullies his way down to the bottom side. Had the checkup for him a couple times, as you've seen, including during while we showed the replay. On the bright side for Lane, he's in clean space. The dark side, he's lost a ton of time because of that.
Yeah, he was one of the drivers who pit early, and obviously lost a massive amount of time with that incident, not only getting past the lap cars, but also lost probably maybe 3 to 4 seconds there, clipping the wall and picking up the damage as well.
The lead, though, is still hot and heavy right now, under 60 laps to go this upcoming time by. And again, these drivers are in the 23.9s at the moment. Holly's been very patient since his first couple attempts to try and time his runs here before they come down to the pit lane. These drivers already 50-plus laps on these set of tires.
And I think it might come down to a bit of strategy between these two. We've obviously seen Regan Jr. very strong on short runs, Holly strong on long runs. Might make sense for Holly to actually short pit a little bit here.
Yeah, especially since that can gain you a lot of time with the amount of fall-off there is on the racetrack. The downside is if you get a caution flag, say, or you end up getting held up by traffic, that can end up losing you the time you would have gained by the undercut.
Yeah, that's a big factor in pit stops on the green at this racetrack. You can very, very easily go 2 laps down, and obviously if you go 1 lap down, get in the wave round, or if you are very lucky, you get the lucky dog and you're back in the fight. But if you go 2 laps down, it's a long road back.
For reference sake, just one car, one lap down. Hawley with a hard send. Nearly got to the back bumper of Regan Jr. Coming to 56 laps to go this upcoming time by, approaching halfway in this race. The gap between these two drivers, only about a tenth of a second. Big check up by Regan Jr., another check up by Hawley.
Like Hawley was actually just a little bit too close on exit there to make use of that run. And whilst these two are fighting, these guys are running 24 flats. Jay Felton in third place, just 1.5 seconds back. He's running 23 sevenths.
Gaining tons of time now all of a sudden at this point of the run. Adam Zemke has just pit from the top 6 as well. As big run for Hawley again has to check up. Regan Jr. nearly tapped the fence.
This is a real demonstration of how hard it is to pass at this racetrack, and in a lot of cases it actually does look like Hawley is too close to make use of the runs, which is very frustrating as the driver, because you can clearly see that you're quicker, but if you can't make the run happen, then you're just really stuck there.
Halfway to this race, Daniels and Sumner came down at that mark. Hawley calling for a pit stop right now. The 184's coming in for a stop.
Very aggressive pit entry, but he's made it work and managed to get down to pit road speed. Really good entry.
And it's very difficult to get on this pit road because especially that transition from the banking to the apron and how quick you have to go to gain time.
Yeah, extremely difficult. You pretty much drive the entry to 3 as you would normally, and the goal really is to get off the banking at the last possible moment, because that's where you can keep the most speed. But if you're even slightly too late, as soon as you get down onto the flat, the car stops turning, and we've seen a lot of drivers hit those pit barrels.
Jay Fallon stayed out in our time. Regan Jr. is in the lane at the other end of the straightaway. Danny Cervantes also staying out along with McLaren and Williams II. Off and away goes Hawley, and now it's going to be critical to try and get as much time gain as possible. He does, however, have Thomas Morris coming out with him in traffic.
Yeah, Morris, I thought, might have held him up a little bit on entry, but it looks like he's far enough ahead on exit to not be a factor in that. And now it's really a case of where's Richard Regan Jr. going to come out relative to Hawley.
Jay Fallon also came in. He'll have 2 lap fresher tires than Hawley. Off and away is Regan Jr. How much time can the 184 pick up? A big chunk. Off and away goes Hawley. He's now the net race leader.
And that gives you a real idea of how big an advantage new tires are at this racetrack and how big the drop-off is. Obviously, they were tied right next to each other, and now the gap is easily bigger than 2 seconds.
Danny Cervantes now into the pit lane this time by. Coming in from 4th position now, McLaren, Williams II, Mark Kalin amongst the drivers trying to stretch it and hope for a caution flag, especially with the differences in speed across this racetrack with some of the traffic.
Paul Williams has hit the pit barrels. He was coming down that time and he clipped it with the right side. I think it looped him around on pit entry.
Durbin Olson is the pit lane. Williams II now out of the race. He immediately put the car behind the garage. This is why on your replay.
Yeah, you see he's waiting very, very late, cuts down off the banking, and then the car just goes straight into the pit barrel.
And he's seen immediately just ducking out of the race car, putting the car behind the garage. And now the leaders are in the midst of a hornet's nest. That has allowed Regan Jr. to close right back on in as McLaren nopes out of it.
Yeah, you see Regan Jr. now behind 2 cars side by side. That's going to really slow him down. He shoots the middle though. Not enough space.
And a bit of frustration might be popping up here, especially with these 2 drivers. This has lost Regan Jr. all the time he gained when Hawley was held up by these cars.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, these guys who are staying out on their long runs, trying to chance it a little bit with a yellow or just have some much better pace at the end of the race, you can't blame them for being slow.
Yeah.
It's not their fault. Like, they just don't have tires at this point in the run.
Indeed. McLaren has come down the pit lane, by the way. So that puts Kalin as the current race leader by about 18 seconds after McLaren sacrificed that said lead. At the moment, 9 cars are on the lead lap. Amongst the other cars that are trying to stretch it is Chatley, and that is all. Everybody else has come down for service who is on the lead lap at the moment.
And this is the point where the driver's still trying to stretch it. It's going to start to really go against them. Before there was only a select handful of drivers out there on new tires and a majority on olds. Now it's the opposite way around, and really you're just going to get to the point where you're going to start to get run over by everybody on new tires.
Galen's on the other side of the racetrack for reference sake in the first position. Meanwhile, Regan Jr. and Holly, that fight continues. Inside line, Regan Jr. No. Holly tries to get the squeeze, runs the middle line as he forces the check up of the 46 up 4.
We saw how difficult it was for Holly to try and pass Regan Jr. last run. I don't think that Holly's going to be keen to let Regan Jr. have this spot and then run him back down. I think he's going to want to try and hold on to it.
Kalen has come down the pit lane, so this is for the overall race lead. Lap traffic ahead, James Duke and Adam Shane. Will the traffic be a factor? Will Regan Jr. be able to get to the bottom side? Not yet. Duke stays all the way up to the safer barrier as the leaders go by.
Yeah, literally to the safer barrier there. He actually hit it in the middle of 1 and 2.
See what Regan Jr. elects to try and do. He's been trying that diamond all day. Apron hit by Holly. Here comes the run by Regan Jr. to the inside for the race lead.
And that's really what it takes, a mistake from the lead car. You sort of checked him up on the exit of 4, and Holly with no option there on the top side, just not enough grip up there. Regan Jr. easily clears him.
Adam Shane moves out of the way. Now Regan Jr. looks to try and run away. Was the fastest car out of the two last time by. New race leader with 42 laps to go in this race. Gained about another 10th or 2 after the pass.
And I think the advantage does shift in Regan Jr.'s favor at this point. He has 1 lap fresher tires, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a big deal around this racetrack.
So at this point, what do you do if you're Holly? Do you try and maintain patience and try and save the tires, or do you try and fight back?
I think your best option is to really just maintain pace, try and save the tires, and then hope that in the last 20 laps of the race, you're going to have an opportunity at him. But whilst this is going on, a couple of drivers pitted actually later on. Jay Felton has a lap fresher tires than both Regan Jr. and Holly, and he's actually not too far behind. He's only 2.5 seconds off the lead. He has a shot at this, I think.
Daniels did jump him in the pit stop cycle when he came at exactly halfway at 55 to 56. So we'll have to see how much time Felton can gain up. This race has gone green so far from the drop of the green at the start of the race, Christian. Very clean racing.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of battles as well. It's not like everybody's been really spread out. We've had some serious fights throughout this race, and everybody's doing a great job of having a really clean race. This is a challenging racetrack, and sometimes we do see that the more challenging the track, actually, the less yellows we have, just because everybody has a lot more respect, a lot more understanding that sometimes you just kind of have to let the pass happen right there. We see the 77, the 5 had a big run. 77 just let him go.
Yep, absolutely knew that Felton was closing up, and fairly quickly Felton was in front of Daniels the last run. Meanwhile, Regan Jr. still hoping to hold on in front of the 184. Now the question's going to be, how hard do you expect Regan Jr. to push? Because we've seen how hard he was on the short one last time. This time, it's not as hard of a run, it seems.
I think the advantage is firmly in his favor at this point, and all he has to do is run a pace that's sufficient enough to stop Holly really getting an easy run on him, and that's got to be the goal. But he does have to keep an eye on Felton back there. He can't really slow up, because if he does, Felton's he's definitely gonna catch them. He's only 2.3 behind now.
Yeah, last time by, Felton reeled in 1/10 of a second. As Felton crossed the stripe, reeled in another 1/10 or 2 as well. Holly, in fact, dropped 2/10 of a second to the race lead. Take a look at what's happening, though, around 11th position, because Robert Bisson Jr., he's where he started this race, but he has been fighting with this group of cars, it seems, all day long. Danny Cervantes, Scotty Johnson amongst these competitors. And a bit of contact that time with the wall, it looked like. Yes, Bisson Jr. hit the wall trying to arc it in.
Yeah, we've seen these guys have a really fierce battle throughout the race. The 07, the 3, the 25. They've really been tied to each other this whole time long. And Cervantes has been able to get a little bit ahead. We see the 07 duck under the 3 there.
Yeah, lets him on go after spanking the safer barrier. Trying to arc it up again, the same spot. Moves Scotty Johnson into 11th position. Next position up is Chatley, who, while on the fresher tires, has a lot of damage. Giving up the bottom this time, letting by the faster machines, including Colton Lane, who had to take a second pit stop.
Chatley, one of the drivers who was the earliest to pit, he's been on his tires for 32 laps. Now Scotty Johnson on his for 19. You see the pace differential there, 13 laps. It's a really big deal, especially at these concrete tracks where we see much bigger fall-offs.
Yeah, pardon me on that. Yes, 33 laps on the stint indeed so far for Chatley. Most drivers are as low as 18 for the race lead, though. Regan Jr. still holding on for the time being. Holly starting to reel it back in, especially as they're starting to get to the thick of things in traffic, reeling in 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th the next few laps.
Yeah, traffic's definitely going to present opportunities to pass. We've seen it the previous run. It's going to come down to who's going to make the riskier move when it comes to passing traffic. We see a lot of times we'll have drivers who are rightly so running their own race, and they'll cover the bottom line, and it'll make the leader check up, either have to go to the outside or really have to send it in there to get underneath them.
And we just received confirmation from Paul Williams II directly that when we seen him hit those barrels as well, by the way, Christian, he did blow the tire. That's why we seen him go so high up in turn 3, I believe, before arcing it down to get to the pit lane in turn 4. But the leaders still trying to get by the rest of the traffic, including the driver on the oldest tires in Chatley.
Yeah, and that's really unfortunate for Paul Williams. Literally the worst time possible to have the tire blow, and that comes with the risk of trying to have that really long run strategy, and that's something that can happen and where it doesn't pay off.
Chatley moving out of the way of the race leaders once again as these drivers have reeled their way around. Felton has gone even the past couple laps in terms of the pace. However, on the 5-lap and 10-lap averages, he has been quicker than the top two. He did lose some time because of the traffic of Melican along with Telez here you see in the backdrop.
Yeah, and it looks like Telez has actually got some pretty good pace right now. But obviously a lap further back and with a little fresher tires, I believe, and I think that's causing Felton some headaches. Whereas the leaders now, they've got quite a big gap until they reach the next lap car.
For confirmation's sake, by the way, Felton, before reaching that traffic, was on average in the past 5 and 10 laps, a 1/10 of a second quicker than the race leaders. But the gap now, with this traffic, has now re-expanded to more than 2 seconds between him and Regan Jr. In fact, loses some more time trying to get by Chatley. Coming up to 25 laps to go this time by, though. Your thoughts on this race so far, Christian?
Well, I think that's actually really put paid to Felton's run. Losing half a second, it's very, very difficult to run time down. You're never, ever really pulling more than a 1/10 a lap at most. So a 2-second gap, at minimum 20 laps to get up to the leaders unless they start fighting. I think it's firmly to Regan Jr.'s advantage right now. Holly might be saving some tires, but if he's going to have an opportunity, it's going to be very, very late on.
Agree with you at this point. And for Regan Jr., of course, last season's champion, had some dominating performances then. Has had some good speed this season, but only one driver has had multiple victories this season. It's been tough to come by to win more than one race, it seems, this season, even for the top runners.
Yeah, there's a lot of drivers in the series who on their day are capable of winning the race, and obviously we see a couple of drivers who are always in the fight, say Regan Jr. and Holly. But we have seen there's drivers who had their day. Pat Harvey, extremely strong at Bristol on the long run. It looked like he nearly had that race until that very late yellow came out. And Jay Felton as well, another driver we've seen pick up a race win and a lot of pace. So there's a lot of drivers who can take a win in the series, which makes it very difficult to be a multiple race win.
Absolutely, and currently battles starting to form up a little bit amongst the drivers who are a lap down. This is currently for the second car 1 lap down. McLaren trying to hold off a charging Melican. They did pass by Chatley, who was also for position. This is for 13th spot on the racetrack. But again, Melican currently on 43 lap-old tires. McLaren, though, on 25 lap-old tires.
McLaren on the newest tires in the field right now, the drivers that are effectively on the same strategy. But it's going to take him a long time to really make this pay off. Obviously a very, very long play for him right now. And running in 13th. I think he's going to have a shot at getting himself up to Robert Bisson Jr., who is in 11th, but it's going to take him probably until the end of the race to get that done.
Yeah, Bisson Jr. just got lapped, in fact, in the past couple laps, so move the meter stick now up for McLaren to try and close 4 seconds to have a shot at the lucky dog at this point, if there was indeed a caution flag here. But still a dominant performance out towards the front by the 2 Ford Mustangs of Regan Jr. and Hawley. Regan Jr. has grown the gap in the past 10 laps now to 9/10 of a second.
It looks like Regan Jr. started to turn the pace up a little bit, and Hawley hasn't responded to him. Either he can't, or he's just making the decision not to, but I don't think you can let the leader get out to over a second with less than 20 laps to go. I think that's going to be a near impossible gap to run down now.
To be precise, Regan Jr. average last 10 laps 23.467, Hawley 23.527. And because of that, Jay Felton, we talked about him, now that he's free of the traffic, is also starting to reel in a chance for second position. If he can keep up the pace, he's running a 10th of a second faster. Let's take a look at Felton, to be precise, as he's finally got him by some of the lap cars.
Yeah, it looks like Felton might have a chance at Hawley for that second spot, but definitely not making the inroads he needs to on Regan Jr. if he wants a shot at the win. He's actually losing time. Regan Jr. is the fastest of the top 3 right now.
Here's a look at the lap comparison, to be precise here. And you can see with the positives, Hawley has been going in the wrong direction compared to Felton. Felton's been running in the 23.5s and 6s, just went into the 6s, in fact, a couple laps ago. Hawley, meanwhile, has been in the 6s for a majority of that time, and the high 6s at that.
Yeah, and it's interesting that Hawley's pace has fallen the way it has, because the first run he looked the strongest of the long run drivers, whereas this run he's actually the weakest of this top 3 right now.
Yeah, you have to wonder what's going through the head of Hawley at this point after showing great speed in the first half of the race. Now on 1 lap older tires, all of a sudden things have gone the opposite way. In fact, losing another 10 this past time by. In fact, what do you think he's thinking about at this point in the closing stage of this race?
I think at this point he's really content to run in that second spot. Clearly the shot at the win is gone unless there's a yellow, but he can see Felton closing him down, and it's gonna be difficult for Felton to get past. But the gap is 7/10, and with 13 and 14 laps to go, it's definitely doable for Felton to pull this pass off and steal that second spot.
Absolutely. Let's take a listen, in fact, with Felton here from the onboard shots as he tries to close this gap. Just take a listen at how he bumps around this track. And you can almost hear Christian with the amount of throttle he's trying to push on corner entry. He's really going for it.
Yeah, and you can see that with the line he's running. That kind of all pairs together where he's driving it in really deep. He's actually not getting down to the white line really as low as he can do. You see he's maybe a quarter to a half car higher, and that's pushing him onto that diamond line and up into that big black strip of rubber that you can see there, and really getting it straight and coming off the corner. Right now, he's about 0.5, 0.6 seconds behind Hawley with 10 to go. It's still a big ask at this point to get that second spot.
Indeed, this time had to back away a bit from the safer barrier, coming to 10 laps to go precisely for Richard Regan Jr. Gap has now grown to 1.7 seconds for Regan Jr., looking to come away with the second victory of the season. Has had a lot of top 5s and top 10s this season once more. But it is a tight championship battle even with the victory when you think of the big picture here, because remember, Hawley already has a drop. For Regan Jr., he does not have one yet, and that will be factored into the final round of the season.
Yeah, and with it being quite a short season as well, only 10 races, it means that you don't have many opportunities to make mistakes or many opportunities to make points back. If you do have more than one mistake, obviously you get that drop week, but beyond that, it's challenging if you're involved in wrecks. It's a long road back.
8 laps to go now for the Abruzzi Racewear USA machine. That P8 starting to heat up. This is for the last car on the lead lap, just in front of the race leader, in fact. Christian Callahan trying to hold on. All while Danny Cervantes is closed in 3/4 last time by.
Yeah, Callahan with 2 lap older tires, but Cervantes definitely looks strong on this late run as he clips the wall on the front stretch.
A couple drivers have done that. We've seen it with Bisson Jr., now with Cervantes, and why do you feel that is?
I think a lot of it comes down to muscle memory. A lot of drivers have a lot of experience at this racetrack, and it's not changed physically over the years that it's been on iRacing until that addition of that safer barrier. And I know that for me personally, it was really difficult, especially on corner exits. I like to kind of drop in after the safer barrier, and all of a sudden I wasn't able to do that. And for me, it actually slowed down the track about a 1/4 tenth, and really does change your line. You come off the corner with more wheel into it or less throttle, and it's very tricky.
Danny Cervantes nearly hit the front fender of Callahan. Slaps the wall to say, I've got P8, my friend. That's a +16, by the way, for him in the race. The biggest mover tonight.
That was a great move right there. He got that done really, really clean. It was obviously very, very close, but it needs to be aggressive with 5 to go. You can't afford to wait if the opportunity is there.
Yeah, next position for him up the road is about 2 seconds or so. Charles Sumner might be able to get to the back bumper him by the closing stage of this race. 4 to go, though, for the race leaders. Regan Jr. right behind him, in fact, to try and lap him.
And that's actually going to be his limiting factor, is if Regan Jr. is going to lap him and take one of those laps away from him in that opportunity. I think he's going to be fighting to stay on this lead lap with only 4 to go.
Yeah, for Regan Jr., that is the closest car to him. Then a gap to Charles Sumner by about a second and a half. Just has to be careful here if he elects to try and lap the 25. 2 laps to go this time by, final 2 miles.
And Cervantes will really want to stay on this lead lap because Sumner is actually running nearly 3/10 a lap slower than him. So if he can get to him, I think he can get the pass done.
Fastest car on the track, in fact, was Richard Regan Jr. with a 23.602. He's grown the gap by more than 2 seconds during this long green flag run since the pit stops. 1 to go from Dover International Speedway. White flag is out.
He's definitely had a much better second run. Obviously learned a lot in that first run, and he's really made it happen with his tire saving. I'm surprised, but he's done a great job. I really thought he would struggle on the long runs at this racetrack, but it's actually been the opposite. He's clearly the strongest car tonight.
Richard Regan Jr. for the second time this season wins in the PRL Cup Series. He comes away with the checkered at Dover. Holly Felton rounds out the top 3. Joshua Daniels, after his win at Talladega, comes away with the top 5, and Adam Zemke rounds out said top 5. But Holly gives his congrats. After a hard-fought battle between these 2 drivers all race, they dominated the 2 of them combined. And as Richard Regan Jr. burns it on down, we'll take a step aside. When we come back, post-race coverage will get underway. You're watching the Global SimRacing Channel live from the virtual Dover International Speedway in Dover, Delaware. Welcome back to the virtual Dover International Speedway for post-race coverage of the Precision Racing League Cup Series, sponsored by Diecast Kings. Find them today by going to diecastkings.com or on Facebook at facebook.com/diecastking and by ButtKicker. To find more information and feel what you've been missing, go to thebuttkicker.com. Miles the Monster tried as hard as he could to take victims, but today, a clean race from start to finish, no cautions for the first time this season. Richard Regan Jr. comes away with the second victory of the campaign by more than 2 seconds. Bradley Hawley finishes in second, but Jay Belden rounding out the top three. Will be with them for post-race coverage in just a little bit. Joshua Daniels comes home in fourth with Adam Zemke, Pat Harvey, Charles Sumner, Danny Cervantes, Tristan Callahan, and Scotty Johnson rounding out your top 10 today.
Pole sitter for the Union, Jose Tellez comes home in 11th alongside Dan McLaren in 12th. Robert Bissell Jr., we saw him have that huge fight for the entirety race, comes home 13th with Robert Milliken in 14th. Mark Kalin made some progress from 21st to 15th, and Thomas Morris went the opposite way, 14th to 16th. Colton Lane, we saw him have some issues early on, and he comes home this first car 2 laps down in 17th with Adam Shane in 18th. Then Brandon Chatley 3 laps down in 19th, and James Duke 4 laps down in 20th.
Stephen Durbin with a rough race, 4 laps down in 21st, had to pit a couple times, missed the pit lane at one point. Paulings the second, blew a tire, hit the pylons. 22nd is where he'll finish. Chad Brown, Baron Hilton, J.D. Baker round out the 25 drivers who made it onto the circuit today. But Richard Regan Jr. came home with his second victory of the campaign tonight. Richard, second multi-race winner this season. How are you feeling?
Feeling good. That was a tough race. Had to save a lot of tire there at the end to try to get the gap on Bradley. He's an awesome racer, so I know he'll always race me hard, but he'll try to keep clean as he can. Obviously at Bristol, he made a mistake, so that I knew that wasn't him at all. But earlier in the race when me and him were racing pretty hard, it was an awesome battle, and just saved my tires hard there at the end, and I knew that was going to be what it came down to. And I'm glad that it went caution free, because if you guys remember from last season, every time that happened and we would have a caution-free race, we would usually get a caution with like 3 to go, and usually I'd pit and no one else would pit, and then I'd get like 14th or something. So it was nice to see it stay green.
Very hard-fought race today, especially with that green flag run. You hit upon it a little bit with the difficulties with saving the tires. What was kind of your philosophy as this race progressed? Because it looked like the tires fell off of it in the first run, but the second run was like a light switch.
Yeah, so the first run, I didn't really start worrying about tires until 15 laps in, because you never know what you're going to get on the initial start of the race. You could get a nice long green flag run like we got here, or, we could have a caution in 5 laps. And, track position's key. So I didn't save as much as I wanted to on that first run, and then the second run I definitely saved really hard. Bradley would back up, and I'd back up just to keep him on my bumper. So he's still getting that dirty air, and he can't save the tire. And then it was really difficult. It was like a light switch went off with the tires. About 13 laps into the run, the car just plowed tight. So definitely the biggest strategy was trying to save that right front tire.
Now, of course, this is the first race of the second half of the season, and it's been a hard-fought championship battle. Only 1 point, yes, 1 point gained on Holly. Check that, 2 in total, now an 11-point advantage in the standings. How difficult will it be to try and get as much of an advantage as you can with how hard this championship fight may be with Holly?
Yeah, we just gotta be consistent. We have been really consistent this season. We either get a top 3 or we wreck. So, consistency is key. And I gotta get better at that. Bradley's been really, really consistent. I think there's only one race where he finished outside the top 10, maybe not even that. So that's my goal for the rest of the season, and just we'll keep working at it one race at.
Next race at Martinsville, your quick thoughts.
Oh, I love Martinsville. I love me short tracks, especially flat tracks. So you got to use a lot of brake and really take care of the car. So I'm looking forward.
Real quick, anyone you want to thank before we let you go?
Yeah, I gotta thank everyone that watches. My mom, my dad, my stepmom, and my aunt. They always watch. I gotta thank you guys at GSRC for broadcasting. I gotta thank ButtKicker and for coming on board for the PRL title sponsor. And then I got to thank my guys over at Legacy, Bobby Dale Legacy Esports, for making me a better driver every week. Then I got to give a shout out to Abruzzi, ButtKicker, Shell Craftsman, Multiple Sclerosis Society, Susan G. Coleman. And if you guys are looking for a paint, go to facebook.com/neonism and put in your request for a paint and tell them that Rich sent you.
Congratulations on the victory tonight. 93 laps led this evening. That was Richard Regan Jr. coming home with the victory tonight. 3 laps led for Holly, but it was a hard-fought race between him and Regan Jr. Christian Schouners with your second-place finisher, Holly.
Bradley, it looked like it was a really good fight the whole race long, all 110 laps under green, and you and Richard Regan Jr. were never really far apart. And that first run, it looked like you had a little bit of an advantage on him. Came out ahead of him after that pit stop. You short pit him by 1 lap, but then it looked like the lap cars kind of worked against you, and Regan Jr. was able to get past and then actually manage the gap and pull away. But still, it looked like it was a really, really good race and a really fun fight.
Yeah, I was really hoping those lap cars didn't hold me up as much because I was hoping to get Richard to burn up his tire or right front and give me my advantage back that I had before pit stops.
Yeah, it definitely looked like the lap cars. Those guys were trying to stay out a little bit longer to have a bit more pace towards the end of the race, and they were 2 by 2, and it unfortunately looked like it just kind of caught you guys out as a pair. You did come out with quite a substantial advantage on Richard Regan Jr. after the pit stop, and unfortunately that evaporated with the lap traffic. And after you fell out to second, kind of what was the game plan at that point? Did you have any plays that you were gonna try and see if you could get something to happen at the end of the race?
Well, I still was trying to get Richard to burn up his stuff and save my right front at the same time, but it seemed like that 1 lap that he had on me on fresher tires, was a pretty decent factor, and me pushing a little harder to try to get him to make a mistake.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. At these concrete racetracks, that 1 lap, it makes a bigger difference than I think most people would expect, especially under green flag stops. And I do think that worked against you, but you still held on to a second spot and came home only 2 seconds behind. So you got to be pretty happy with that. Obviously, points-wise, it puts you in a good spot, only losing the minimum number of points effectively to Richard Regan Jr. Before we head to Martinsville next week, and a very different type of racetrack. What are your thoughts for that?
I think it's going to be save the right front again. It's either save the right front or rear tires. I'll have to do some testing and kind of figure out a game plan.
It'll definitely be an interesting race for us guys to watch, and one of my favorite tracks, and I hope it's a favorite of other guys in the series too, because it can put on some really good racing, and as you say, definitely more tire management, especially when it comes to rear tires getting off the corner. And before we let you go, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to?
I'd like to thank Diecast Kings for sponsoring the series, and you guys for broadcasting us when y'all are able to, and North Star Title and the Waterback crew.
All right. Well, thank you for coming and chatting with us today, and good luck for Martinsville next week.
Thank you very much.
That was your second place finisher tonight, Bradley Hawley. Third place finisher, Jay Felton, now standing alongside me. He led a lap tonight on strategy, but Felton, how are you feeling after such a hard-fought race? First time this season a race has gone fully green.
I thought I had a good run. It went pretty well. I'm just searching for that balance between speed and tire wear, and may have missed it just a little bit, but I thought it was a great race. I could see what was going on up ahead. Looked like they were getting after it, and I want to congratulate all the drivers in this league. I mean, to go caution free here, it's just a great job, guys.
Absolutely, and you're one of the quickest cars, mind you, on the racetrack for much of that second run. What was your strategy plan to try and close that gap, especially with the slight overcut?
The strategy was just to, run 55 laps and go as fast as you could for 55 laps, not as fast as you could for 10 or 20 or 30. And that's really all you could do, Justin. And hope that the guys up front got to racing and maybe put a little pressure on the right front tire. But I wanted to wait and pit a couple of laps after the leaders did, just in case a caution came out. It would have been pretty cool. I'm actually glad it didn't. I'm glad the way the race played out like it did. But my strategy is always the same. To go as fast as I can over the period of a green flag run. And I found I was really close to that balance tonight. I don't know if I got it all, but I was pretty happy with it.
Next race is at Martinsville. What is your thoughts on the paperclip, especially with the track known for its bumping and banging at the short track level?
My thoughts are survival. I mean, I don't survive those races too often. And, if I could survive it and finish and have a good finish, I'd be real happy with that.
Anyone you want to thank before we let you go?
Yes. I want to thank our sponsors, Diecast Kings and ButtKicker. Thank you for helping this league out. I want to thank GSRC, Christian, Justin, Sean. Thank you, guys. You're killing it, man. I want to thank my buddy Mike for helping me get ready for these races and helping me get prepared to, put the best product I can on the track. But there's one person I really want to give a shout out to tonight. That's Charles Sumner. Charles works really hard based on everything I see behind the scenes. He's had some tough things thrown his way this year, and he's just handled it with class. And I think we're very lucky to have an admin like Charles. And Charles, thank you for everything you're doing, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely agree with you on that one. Congratulations on the top three tonight.
Justin.
That was Jay Felton coming home third tonight. I'd like to thank him as well as Richard Regan Jr. and your second place finisher as well, and Bradley Hawley for stopping by during our post-race coverage. Real quickly, Christian, your final thoughts on what was a very clean and very green Dover race tonight.
Yeah, I think that was a great race, and I think we saw a lot of different strategies, a lot of really good racing, and no yellows for the first time this season. And I think that's really good to see. It's a tough track, and I think a lot of drivers will definitely be feeling it after that 110 lap green flag run at Dover is definitely not an easy thing to do, and I think it puts them in good shape for when we go to Martinsville next week. I think that's a different challenge, but definitely another tire saving challenge, only that time it'll be rear tires, and I think we should expect to see a lot of good racing.
Expect that as well, and potentially the use of the chrome horn maybe at Martinsville in the paperclip. We'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's exciting action from Dover International Speedway. We'd also like to thank Charles Sumner and the rest of the Precision Racing League for organizing this strong series. thanks as well to the companies that sponsor the series in Diecast Kings and ButtKicker, as well as to the companies that provide the software and hardware for broadcast listed up on your screen now. Additional thanks go to Jude Long, who provides her wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today and Christian and Sean as well. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at globalsimracingchannel.com. If you'd like to help out and support the channel, you can check out our merchandise for sale at gsrc.storemvy.com. Or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and on Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to the YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button as well, so you don't miss a moment here on the Global SimRacing Channel. The next time the series hits the track is at Martinsville on May the 10th for what should be some exciting racing from the paperclip. Be sure to tune in starting at 8:50 p.m. Eastern Time. That is at 12:50 a.m. GMT. We also have upcoming races for other series listed up on your screen, so be sure to check those out and mark them down in your calendar. But until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.